Today on the podcast, I have a special guest. She is a passionate physician and women's health expert, Dr. Prudence Hall. Dr. Prudence Hall started as a traditional gynecologic surgeon and transitioned her career to focus on regenerative and integrative medicine. As the founder of the Hall Center in Santa Monica, California, she saw a critical need to address the problems confronting women and men experiencing the stubborn and often debilitating symptoms associated with aging. Her practice is focused exclusively on regenerative medicine, looking into the root causes of conditions and diseases rather than simply treating symptoms. She strives to help clients achieve optimal health and actively prevent disease without the use of pharmaceutical drugs when appropriate. As you'll learn on this podcast, she strives to help patients achieve optimal well-being and actively prevent inevitable decline with proven natural regenerative methods. And she's also the author of Radiant Again and Forever. And if you listen to the end of this podcast, you'll know that she gives the link on how you can download her book for free. Please enjoy my interview with Dr. Prudence Hall. Welcome to the Health, Habits, and Epic Living podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sherry Price. The goal of this podcast is to educate and enable empowered women to take the next step towards achieving their health, wellness, and lifestyle goals. Let's get started. Dr. Prudence Hall, I'm so excited that we are able to connect on the podcast finally. So excited for you to be here. To get started, I talked about in your intro how you went from being a gynecologic surgeon, trained in that field, practiced in that field, and transitioned your career into more of a regenerative and integrative medicine field. Can you talk about the path that, took you down that pathway? I'm always curious about how people journey through healthcare and wind up where they are.
Me too, Sherry. I'm always interested in people finding some of their purposes in life and what causes them to feel passionate every day. So for me, I trained at a very poor county hospital, USC County Hospital, part of Keck School of Medicine. And I had training in every field, especially in surgery and in obstetrics. And when I went into private practice, I realized that some of my sickest patients were women going through menopause. I mean, they would cry, they would beg me for solutions. And the solutions I had learned really in my residency program, they were not adequate. So I was taught check one value, the FSH, which is a brain hormone. If it's above 20, which indicates menopause, put them on Premarin, which was really, it's very outdated. I haven't used it probably in 3 decades, well, more like 4 decades now, but it's pregnant horseassurin, discovered in the mid-40s, and then see them in the ear. So that's what it's Sherry. And it was, these patients really helped me to discover new paths in terms of how to stay healthy and vibrant and youthful, through your 50s, 60s, 70s, 90s, take care of women of all ages. So I needed answers, and I couldn't stand the suffering that women were experiencing due to my lack of knowledge. So I really took this on. And it's been a passion of mine for the last really 4 decades. Helping women. I see women every day, lots of new patients too. And I just love the way that women go from feeling defeated and tired and sort of worthless. This sense of self starts to disappear. And what comes back is this confident and ready to conquer. I'm ready to work with teams again. And what they do when they come back to their full capacities and energy is just, it's incredible what women do. Start schools, climb mountains, write books, create, organizations that help other people. So that's what keeps me in this field of regenerating ourselves back to a space of radiance and community.
I just love the picture that you paint for that, because I know for a lot of women, when they start to feel, let's just say lousy, I know that's not very medical, but when they just start to feel sluggish, tired, brain fog, weight gain, just not like themselves. Like you said, they lose their sense of self, or their purpose is not driving them like it used to. And they just feel like the wheels are slowly or fastly coming off. It could be this time where it's like, oh, are the best years of my life behind me? Is this the new life I have to look forward to? And I like how you mentioned, that regenerative, that we can, rebirth when we find modalities that really bring our health back, bring our energy back. So can you talk more about how you now found that Premarin, and what we know from the Women's Health Initiative, right? That's not the best form of hormones to be taking. What did you discover as you moved through, being open-minded, getting more curious, and really learning about how women can regenerate their health?
Mm-hmm. So what I've learned about Premarin is that it gets rid of hot flashes, which can be very troublesome, but it doesn't do the rest of the promises that bioidentical hormones do. It doesn't bring back the sex drive. It doesn't make you lose weight. If anything, it causes more weight gain. It doesn't really help with sleep. So a lot of the symptoms were not being corrected, as well as I would say, decreasing future diseases. So this is a big concept. We want to get rid of the symptoms, all those symptoms you mentioned, plus more like OCD and GI symptoms, GERD and distress, and obviously sleeplessness and terrible depression, anxiety, all of these symptoms. Also, we want to prevent future diseases. So it's kind of like this. I have this pen here. I frequently I do this with patients. So when we lose our estrogen in menopause, up goes a bunch of bad dudes. Up goes inflammation, stress, sugar damage in the body. Up goes the LDL cholesterol. That can be the bad one. Plus those small, dense little particles that ding up the artery and cause plaquing. So what about, these are the core root causes of most diseases of aging. Dementia, sugar, high sugar damage should be at the very top of that. And also low estrogen, low testosterone for men are very much at the top of that. Then you look at stress and inflammation. You look at most of the cancers, and stress and inflammation is a big core root cause, along with really all of the toxicities that we're exposed to. So when I replace the estrogen using exactly the same estrogen that you and I both have and all women have, down go these core root causes. So Premarin doesn't do that. It's kind of like if there's someone at the door, knock, 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 bioidentical hormones is at the door. It gives you flowers and roses and new life, happiness, really joy. Or knock, 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 this is Premarin at the door. It gives you, hormones that'll slip into your cells, but that don't do the same things that your own hormones do. It kind of fools them and kind of says, well, for example, there are a lot of diseases that are increasing with Premarin. Luckily, breast cancer did not increase. That was the Provera that caused an increase in hormones. But by the time that study came out, the big national study came out with Premarin in 2001, I hadn't used Premarin since 1984. So many years. I was going back and forth to France and Europe at the time a lot because I was married to a Frenchman, and I would bring back bioidentical hormones. And I couldn't believe how the sugar levels in our body, damage due to sugar, would drop, and how the LDL and the small dense particles, those small dense particles are ApoB, apolipoprotein B, and apolipoprotein A, and they would just drop, and there's not much that will decrease those things. Diet helps.
Fascinating that you discovered this stuff even before it was well known from the published trial. And just focusing back on some of the aspects that you said, in case that my audience is not in the medical field, right? That Premarin is that synthetic estrogen, and then Provera is the synthetic progestin, which are different than the bioidenticals that we're advocating for here, and saying that those are more like the ones that our body produces, and those are safer. Not only safer, more effective at reducing a lot of the disease burden as we might experience. And we didn't even talk about bone loss, right? Estrogen is so protective on the health of our bones, and also the brain fog, because we know there are so many receptor sites for estrogen inside of the mitochondria and inside of the brain. And so this really helps with mentation, cognition, and reducing, per Dr. Lisa Mosconi's work, as we're seeing, reducing a lot of the Alzheimer's potentially in women. So much promise there, like you mentioned, beyond the heart disease, beyond the cholesterol, bringing in the brain health and bringing in the bone health and just having women feel like themselves, right? Like they're like not losing themselves and they're finding that they are, I'd like to say, feeling youthful again, right? Feeling like they did, yes, earlier on. Yes. And I think it is a form of regenerative medicine, right? Because you're not facilitating the aging process. You're actually doing something to counteract it and delay it.
Yes, that's right. So the aging process starts in our late 30s, and that's perimenopause, when we just have a slight decrease in our estradiol. And women will say, yes, I've gained 7-8 pounds. I have more PMS. PMS is due to low estrogen. Estrogen just plummets right before the period. And it's not really due to low progesterone. I've experimented with that for years, and it just doesn't. It's really the low estrogen when I replace that. And, we regain the body software, I call it, for our hormones, because hormones tell the cells what to do. For example, hormones beat our heart. They connect those neurons together. They build our muscle mass. Definitely estrogen is the gold standard for bone density and regaining that loss with osteoporosis or osteopenia. So how you treat your menopause, which usually starts around age 44 to 49, I would say an average age is maybe 46. It's 10 years younger than when I started this 4 decades ago. How you treat your menopause will define the next 50 years of your life, Sherry. It's, women say, oh, it's natural. Oh, it's going to go away. It doesn't go away. That low estrogen is like the Grand Canyon River that just is carving away the structure of the hills around it. And women come to me at 70 frequently and say, well, I'm through that. And when they say that, I know that means their hot flashes have stopped. And actually, that is an ominous sign. When hot flashes stop, it means the adrenals are burned out. So I don't just look at the ovarian hormones. I look at the adrenal stress glands, the thyroid. I look at the insulin and sugar, our D3, which is the sunshine hormone. So our skin is all a huge endocrine gland. And I make sure that all the hormones are readjusted and rebalanced back to youthful levels. So youthful levels, absolutely, like you said, creates youthful physiology. So, I feel like I'm maybe 40, 35 or 40 and 73. I would never know that. So we don't want to fool the body. We want to stop the damage that happens when the body is said, yeah, you're done. You can't procreate. You're done. Like flowers. They release their pollen and do all of that, and then they die. So we don't need to. We don't need to. We can go bravely forward with our passionate life.
Yeah. So if you would take our audience through, what does your workup look like? I know you're testing hormones. Are you doing it through blood? Are you doing it through urine, saliva? What are some measurements you're interested in, just to get us started and to get our listeners, just a guideline in case they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner and things they should be thinking and asking when they are meeting with that functional medicine practitioner?
Yeah, these are great questions. So I start by looking at blood, and that's an accurate snapshot of where their hormones are at in the moment. I also look at some of the pituitary hormones, which gives us a much longer analysis. Like, how long has that person been in menopause, or are they almost in menopause, but not quite yet? And I look at about 15 different hormones. So I look for the ovarian hormones. I look at the FSH, and that'll tell me in a very kind of succinct way where that person is in relationship to menopause. Then I look at testosterone, which is a very critical hormone for women. It gives us strength and confidence and bone building and muscle building and sex drive, which disappears generally in menopause. Then I look at progesterone, because a lot of women are not in menopause, but they're progesterone deficient. Progesterone helps you sleep and feel more calm. And of course, I look at the estrogen, the estradiol. So that's the ovaries. Then for the adrenals, I do two different types of panels. I start with the blood, DHEAS. Now, this is a critical hormone that lowers the LDL cholesterol, lowers the blood sugar, gives energy, vitality, bone and muscle building, and also runs the sex drive. And then I look at pregnenolone, which is an adrenal stress hormone. So stress is, let's say you're missing your airplane and you're just nervous and you're going to miss your airplane and you might miss it. Well, your heart rate goes up, you start sweating some, you feel, extremely energized. And that's the fight and flight response that happens when we face stress. But in this day and age, we aren't just missing an airplane, once every 2 years or something. We live under continuous stress. And so those hormones that would pour out and give you such energy and a sense of, I can do this, we got this, slowly decrease. And then women are left with, I can't get off the couch. I'm so anxious. I really don't want to drive freeways anymore. I can't do my work. I'm overwhelmed. There's really this sense, almost this shakiness. And that's burnout. So I look at the DHEA, pregnenolone, and cortisol. Cortisol says life is grand. So when that starts to fall and say, why me? They're very depressed. So that's very critical because menopause and perimenopause and the lifestyle that we now have, this is why I'm so happy that you're talking about habits, Sherry, because our habits need tuning. So the lifestyle that we have and the habits that we have are really hurting our adrenals. And it's not just the lack of it's not just menopause. It's birth control pill also, by the way. I could talk for hours on that. But, so then I look at the D3, which is the sunshine hormone. I look at the damage in the body due to sugar. That's the hemoglobin A1C. And then I look at the lipids. I look at all the, white blood cell, red blood cell chemistry panel. And then once I get somebody tuned by about 6 months, I do the Meridian Valley 24-hour urine test. And that tells us all the metabolites. And it gives me a much better idea about the thyroid. Oh, I'm looking at the thyroid. I look at 5 values for thyroid, free T3, free T4, TSH, thyroid antibodies, and reverse T3. So I look at actually 6 levels. Thyroid is missed 40% of the time by endocrinologists and by general practitioners. It's a tricky one. So looking at those amount of hormones for the thyroid is very important.
It is. It is a tricky one. Just to interrupt there, what I find is, the normal lab values that are out in conventional medicine don't really mimic and reflect optimal levels, right? Like I think of normal. I mean, if you look at normal in this country, we're overweight, we're oversugared, we're sick, we're sick levels. Yeah. And so when they're saying our levels are normal, I think for a lot of people, they don't feel normal when they are told their levels are normal. So I really like to, like you said, help women understand, right, what are optimal levels. And I think when we don't understand the optimal levels, that's when we miss a lot of subclinical disease, like you were mentioning it right now with the thyroid.
Oh, that's great, Sherry. I'm so glad you mentioned that because who's getting their blood drawn? Well, 50, 60, 70-year-old people. Is it like, 19, 20, 25-year-old people? No. So all those sick people are in the reference range. And with the thyroid, you really want to ask your doctor to check the free T3. And you want that level at least 3.1, according to Terry Hertog, the luminary in my life, in Belgium. And also Dale Bredesens. He wrote the End of Alzheimer's Disease book right there. Just wonderful, wonderful man. He likes 3.2. So if your T3, free T3 is 2.6, 2.7, you need some thyroid.
Yeah.
And so many miracles happen. Weight loss and women get off antidepressants. Their body pain starts to go away. Their skin becomes more moist. They have fuller hair and their brain is clear. So if I just correct the ovarian hormones, I'm going to have all those other hormones that could be contributing to some of those symptoms. Like what hormone abnormalities cause weight gain? Low estrogen, low testosterone, low thyroid, low adrenals.
High cortisol, right?
High cortisol, low cortisol, high sugar.
Yes.
So you want to just get it. And I've looked at millions of levels. I mean, it seems incredible, but I have. And those hormones for youthful women and men are very different, like you said, than the hormone reference ranges in the different labs that they use.
Yeah. We're about epic and optimal living here. So I love that you gave us exactly what to look for and what values, and to get the full assessment, because it's not just a one thing or a one hormone. They all work together. And knowing, your levels, I think, is so critical. I mean, I get mine tested because even though insurance may or may not cover it, some of them are covered, some of them aren't. I think it's so important to live with that healthy, epic way, because if without your energy, without your cognition, without, just feeling good in your body, it just affects so many other things that we do in our life, particularly as women. And then we begin to self-blame. We begin to get self-critical. We begin to say, well, I don't know why I'm not going to the gym. I don't know why I'm drinking more alcohol. I don't know why I'm craving more sweets. I don't know why I can't lose this 10 or 20 pounds. And then we just, look at ourselves and become critical of ourselves instead of really understanding the hormonal cascade, all of it behind that. If we really uncovered the root cause of all of this, that so many symptoms would go away. And it's doable, right? And not to be dismissed by, clinicians out there that say, oh, this is just a normal part of aging. And I just don't want women to hear that message. I really want women to feel empowered to understand their health, learn from experts like yourself, have access to this information so that they can take the best care of themselves moving forward. So with that, I'd like to talk more about, we gave us a great understanding of the labs and a lot of the assessments that you do, and, where to look for free T3 and estrogen and estradiol. What about progesterone? What about testosterone? What are your thoughts around these other sex hormones first? And then we can, talk about the other hormones like cortisol.
Yeah. So our sex drive is a primal energy that we have. We're mammals, we're animals, and it's a primal, it builds our muscles and our bones. It gives us confidence. It runs this yummy sexuality where we can use it as we want. I mean, we don't have to make love, because we have a good sex drive. We could create beautiful pieces of art. It's a creative hormone. It's a regenerative, creative hormone. So that which creates children, and testosterone does run that sex drive to procreate our race, our Homo sapiens, but it also can be put into all kinds of creative projects. And when testosterone is low, we feel, well, first of all, we gain weight because muscle mass metabolizes faster. So you have a faster metabolism. Also, we don't have to take these bone builders and all these pharmaceuticals because testosterone and estrogen together, they're wonderful in terms of rebuilding the bones and making sure we don't lose them. Abe Morgentaler, wonderful man. I just love him. He's the father of testosterone therapy out of Harvard. And I was at a conference with his team not that long ago, and they were talking about the scandal of testosterone not being available in any pharmaceutical preparation. And they went before Congress and went before the FDA and gave all the, the data and the reasons and why testosterone for women was so important, including helping to prevent dementia. And they haven't budged. So it's still not approved for women's use. So I have to use, these little creams, or I also use injections once a month for women and little troches that you suck on. So, that's a very important hormone for women. What was the other one you're asking about?
Yeah, and progesterone.
Oh, progesterone. Yeah, we should mention oxytocin too. So progesterone is the brake to the estrogen, which regenerates. Estrogen, yes. It goes, and then progesterone says, not that much. So estrogen builds the endometrium, builds the breast, and does a lot of wonderful things throughout every cell in the body has estrogen receptors, meaning that estrogen will go into those cells and do some kind of work. And progesterone kind of decreases that. So I never prescribe progesterone before prescribing estrogen in menopause, because women have no estrogen. I don't want to block it before women start to have some good levels. I wait 2 or 3 weeks. Progesterone also is important for the brain. and it is important to help prevent breast cancer. So in the brain, it releases GABA, GABA, which calms, promotes sleep. It is a calming hormone just in terms of during the day, we feel, I would say, just more relaxed. It's one of the problematic hormones I work with, Sherry, because, you have to get the estrogen up to a certain level. So I start with lower and I'm kind of like we're climbing the ladder. Okay, there we go. Now we can add a whole bunch of progesterone. And you can either cycle it in, meaning for 15 days out of the month, or you can give it continuously. But it's an important hormone. And I always use it.
Yeah, I like how you talked about exactly the role testosterone plays. And when we're talking about that drive, I think that's that drive, that creative force, like you mentioned. It's not just related to intercourse or not intercourse, but really when people have their hormones balanced, what I'll hear a lot of times is, oh, I feel like wearing certain clothes again, or I feel more feminine again, or I feel more confident, or I feel more sexy, or I just feel more like myself, right? And so I love how you point out it is this creative energy, creative force. And it's not just as we find on many ways that maybe I was educated. It's all about hot flashes. It's all about vaginal dryness, and it's all about libido, right? That's what pharmacy school indoctrinated into my brain, but it's so much more than that. And I love that it has the effects of rebuilding the vaginal canal and preventing the dryness and all of those things that, are unwanted and are discomfortable or uncomfortable for women. So it's just more than the hot flashes. It's more than the vaginal dryness. It's so much about that creative energy. And I love how you pointed that out and how we can, manifest that. And when that is lost, how we begin to feel lost. And then diving into the progesterone part about the relaxant effects, because I know for me, my anxiety was kicking up and was increasing. And I'm like, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? There's no added stress that I'm seeing in my life. There's no reason for this anxiety to be rearing its head. And then, of course, age and thinking of and listening and educating myself about the perimenopause, different symptoms and why they're there. And of course, when I went to my conventional medicine doctor, I was offered an anti-anxiety med. And that's just not how I wanted to treat it for me. And really wanted to see if this was related to perimenopause, and progesterone worked wonderful for me in that regard. And my sleep is amazing. My Aura Ring tells me it's amazing. And so, yeah, I feel back to how I felt before. And I just feel that is where I wanted to be, right? And I love that we're educating women so that they can make the proper choices for themselves. You mentioned about oxytocin, and we can go there, but I'd also like to, after there, dovetail into stress management, because that is huge. And I don't know if women really hear that, understand that, but we can dive there next. Let's talk a little bit about oxytocin, because I think that's important as well.
Yeah. It's not a well-known hormone, but it is a pituitary brain hormone, and it creates a calm in the body. So when you mentioned that women in perimenopause and menopause drink more alcohol or do more or have more unhealthy habits, such as that, oxytocin is the hormone that is I would say, the breaker of unhealthy habits. So women will have, let's say, 25 or 50 IUs of oxytocin in the evening. And they'll say, oh, I don't even need alcohol. I feel good. I feel not high or drunk, but just I feel relaxed and complete unto myself. And it also causes women to have orgasms much faster, which of course is a terrible thing that happens in menopause, where we lose the muscle mass in our vaginal area, where we can't really feel those contractions, and also where we just, we have no sex drive, and testosterone, of course, helps with that. But oxytocin really helps us to have better orgasms. But I love how it feels. Whenever I go abroad to visit some of my friends, I'll bring them 3 or 4 bottles of oxytocin, because there's not a single side effect to it. If you have really burned out adrenals, you might feel a little bit more tired. But as long as your adrenals are even decent, you just feel connected. It's a tribal hormone. You feel like, this is my tribe. This is my team. And as such, I would say that it's a love hormone, because really we are one. We just feel that we're separate. So oxytocin brings a more true oneness to a group. Like you walk into, I give it to all my women who are, they call themselves, shy, or they're, introverts. And they'll say, yeah, going to a big meeting and, there are 100 people. Say, okay, just take some oxytocin. You're going to be going up to people. You're going to feel that they're your long lost brother. And it has that effect. It's a mild hormone. You can drive, you can do everything with it. You don't really know that, even that you have it. But if I'll do a big conference, I'll take it and give it out to people, because really it should be over the counter.
Wow.
So,
And how I know there are natural ways we can increase our oxytocin, but you're talking really a pharmaceutical way. And how are people able to have that? Is that through just a functional medicine doctor and a compounding pharmacy that's able to be?
Yes. So it's made in a compounding pharmacy, but breast stimulation. I mean, that's one of the tantric secrets, is that which is more important, the vaginal clitoral stimulation or the breast. And actually the nipple stimulation, I could show you, just taking the nipple and twiddling it back and forth, that releases massive oxytocin. Nursing your baby. I nursed my babies for about 3 to 4 years. My neighbor was egging me on because she was a Peace Corps. She had been a Peace Corps worker in Africa, and they nurse their babies till they're 7. But, massive oxytocin is released during nursing. And I think that I just love the bonding, feeling bonding with my child. So anyway, nursing definitely releases it, and it's natural. That's one reason to nurse. So you're really bonded with your little baby. And then also orgasms. So whether they're with another or self-induced, that'll release tons of oxytocin. And so it's the love binding hormone that binds us together.
Yes. And I know petting pets, they're hugging pets, hugging others are ways that you can also naturally increase oxytocin if you're not ready for the prescribed version. Yeah, I love that you hit on all of that, because it's really important women understand what's going on in their bodies, where our bodies, may be functioning differently now that we've hit different age brackets and age frontiers, and how to navigate those frontiers. And so they are empowered to make the right choice for them. Now I want to pivot to what I was saying about stress management, because I've had numbers of guests come on this podcast, and I know myself, right? Stress just hits us differently as we age for many reasons. There might be new stresses in our life, or more responsibility of our life, or our kids get older and their consequences get greater, whatever have you. We have just a reduced ability to deal with stress. So I used to be of the mindset that I didn't need meditation. That just takes too long. And of course, now that I'm older, I'm like, wait a second, there's something to this meditation and trying it. But there are many ways that we can reduce stress. And I'd love for you to talk about that connection with the cortisol and how our bodies navigate stress, because I think it's really important to hear it from other practitioners and how they guide their patients on stress management practices.
Yeah. So most of the time when women will come to me, they're at a very decreased level of the hormones. So bringing those hormones back to youthful levels, of course, is important. But let's just say that you're walking through the day, or, sitting at your desk and going through the day, and something's hitting you, oh my God, the deadlines, the worry, the concern, and that needs to be done. And, we have multitasking all day long, which is very stressful. And that takes us away from the present moment. If we concentrate on one thing at a time, that really helps stress. So some people will make a list and say, I'm just concentrating on that. And then when it's crossed off, they go to the next one. That's actually a lot more efficient, and that decreases stress to organize your day like that. The second thing is, the breath, pranayama, the breath work. So one of the major, I would say, is just very quick ways to help deal with stress in the moment. You should take 2 quick breaths through the nose, like, I don't know if you can hear me, but to the count of 8. You do that 3 times, and I've measured this with biometrics and stress management techniques, and stress will drop from a high down to a moderately low. It's just incredible. 3 breaths. And it's coming through the mouth.
Yeah, and if you're on YouTube watching this video, you will see how Prudence is walking us through it. I've also heard of this similar technique. Maybe it's the same where Dr. Andrew Huberman has talked about yoga nidra. Is this a form of yoga nidra breathing?
Yes. And pranayama is just so wonderful in terms of opening your heart and your mind and your love. And so there's lots, but this one is just easy in the moment. You're in the elevator, you're late.
Yeah, I've used it too, and I find it very effective at calming that parasympathetic nervous system, allowing that, calm down effect and lowering your cortisol and stress in the moment. Beautiful.
Another way is to imagine something different. So some people will say, we'll count backward by threes. That would just drive me crazy. Or some people say, name all the things that are blue. But for me, singing a song inside or even outside, just very briefly, row, row, row your boat. And suddenly you're out of that stress and you're into something else. So it's distraction, basically. Quiet music. Now, I like world music. I like all kinds of, very interesting sitar and instrumental groups like that. But any kind of music that you find calming to you or making you feel happy. So happiness is a great antidote to stress because we're not in that, can I do it? Can't think I, and really, from your thoughts come your emotions. And from your emotions, you create this beautiful body or a body that's not so healthy. So how do you change your thoughts? Well, you can interrupt. So as soon as you say, I don't know how to do that. It's like, wait, Prudence, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm going to learn how to do that and I'm going to love doing it. So you can really talk to yourself and give you soothing. I mean, we're just little children. So for anyone who's had children on their own or who's taken care of pets or, other people's children, we know that we need encouragement and that we become what we tell ourselves. So I'm constantly interrupting when I'm stressed, those stressful thoughts and encouraging myself. Come on, Prudy. Little Prudy's inside. She's the anxious one. You can do this. And I just start to laugh. Of course I can do it. So the way I treated my children and grandchildren, people with such acceptance and being non-critical, we shatter. We not really shadow it back, but we offer that to ourselves. And that is, a beautiful way to decrease stress.
I love that so much as a mindset coach. And I talk a lot about the mindset strategies that have helped me overcome my over drinking in the past. I think that is so powerful. And what I love about it is the skill. The more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you do it, not only the easier it gets, the more effective. And it's this strategy that can help you. That's not a drug that's free, right? As long as you learn to cultivate that. It's a beautiful thing.
I would just like to say that a wonderful book is by Bill Mayer. And it's about, I don't have the exact name because of it, but it's called The Miracle, I think, of Asking the Right Questions. And Mayer is Mayer. So I've learned that why questions torture me and create enormous stress in a question of what might I best do now that this X, Y, and Z has happened to me. That gives me resources to answers right away. What might I best do in this situation where I'm feeling so stressed? Oh, you can do this. So, asking yourself the right questions really helps to change what's going on up there.
So empowering. Oh my gosh, so empowering. I love that you mentioned that book. I've never read that book, but I'm always up for a good read when it's self-help and something that we can implement into our lives. The other book I would throw out to the audience, and maybe you've read it, is Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief. Have you read that one?
I love Bruce.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. And Joe Dispenza and Bruce have a lot together. I love Joe Dispenza. And
same. Yeah. But Bruce Lipton, when I listen to any of his podcasts, when he's ever on, I get a nugget each time, or it just hits me on a deeper level. So I can read that book over and over and makes me smile and really makes me think. Really love that. So thank you for sharing that resource.
Great.
So as we wrap up, I was going to ask, what are some of the habits that you think are most instrumental, right? I know that we talked a lot about hormones. Maybe some people are interested in, pursuing that route. Maybe some people are not, but what are some habits that really lead to greater health, greater wellness, particularly as we age as women?
Well, just segueing from the thoughts, I would say the power of positive thinking and thinking that propels you to answers rather than propels you into the self-criticism. Why did that happen? Why? These kind of why questions. So asking those right questions will really help give you the answers. Exercise. It's so important. Not exercise where you're necessarily running yourself into the ground and exhausted, but high intensity interval exercises. A lot of times when I'm really busy, I'll go for a walk for 12 minutes. 90 seconds to that will be just walking and then 30 seconds powering. And I do that 6 times. I just look at I just turn on my stopwatch. And by the time every 2 minutes, I've done one interval. You just do 12 minutes and you're done with that. 3 minutes of high intensity exercise. That means as fast as you can go. Be careful when you do that. As fast as you can go. And you haven't burned out your adrenals with that because it's a total of 3 minutes, unlike intensive running. So exercise, I love Pilates. I just love the weights and the stretching and you can go online. You could do 10-minute ab exercises with people or, so daily exercise or at least 3 or 4 times a week. Sleep 8, 9 hours, 6, 5, 6. That's going to really burn out our adrenals and create a lot of dysfunction. So in your sleep, magnesium glycinate at night is wonderful for that. Melatonin, I'm using 5, 10, 15, 20 milligrams working up with women. Melatonin is anti-inflammatory and also it helps to decrease breast cancer and other colon cancer and other cancers. So we shouldn't be afraid of it.
I've heard another practitioner talking about melatonin as the master antioxidant. So when you're saying it's that powerful, right? It's, antioxidizing a lot of the dysfunction and imbalances in our body.
Yeah. And oxidation is like that nail left out in the rain where it's rusting. We don't want to rust our brain. So a bunch of the big neurologists take, 20 milligrams a day to help prevent that oxidation of the brain and body. So powerful thinking, exercise, diet. Really eat the healthy fats. That would be olive oil, avocado oil, maybe a little bit of coconut oil, not too much, but a little bit is fine. Plant-based. Plants are the way to go. I love to just throw a bunch of plants in my blender, and it blends up. And sometimes I'll put a little bit of almond milk in it, sometimes water, sometimes a bunch of berries and drinking that with all that fiber. So lots and lots of fiber, collects the cholesterol to it. It helps decrease your cholesterol. It makes you lose massive amounts of weight. There's this bean diet that Loma Linda came up with. You have a half a cup of beans that has 6 grams of fiber with it, 20, 30 minutes before a meal with a glass of water, and people lost more weight than anyone ever. Maintain your weight.
Yeah.
Eat good amounts of protein, not too much protein, 0.8 grams to 1 gram per kilogram. So, we don't want to eat too much because that can decrease our kidney function and hurt that. But enough protein, some protein with each meal. What do you think? You have
Those are beautiful
habits on your program.
I do, and I think my listeners know them, but through my Tone in 10 program, we go through 10 weeks and a different habit each week, and I think you've mentioned most of them. The one that stands out that is hydration, getting proper hydration. And I think right now, we now know a lot more about water intake and using filtered water and sometimes electrolytes because we don't want to use, some of our tap water systems, depending where we live in the United States, can be iffy and the toxic chemicals, they're, little particles, but they can accumulate over time. So I think the type of water, the quality of our water, and then adding enough electrolytes. I think we've demonized salt a little too much. Certain populations for sure need to be more restrictive and are more salt sensitive. But as a whole, I think if we're not eating those processed foods, which contain a whole bunch of salt, right? If we're eating more organic and cooking and from the garden, we're not getting enough salt. And so if we're not hanging on to our salt, right, we're not going to be hanging on to the water. And so making sure that people know how to replenish and do that balance of the electrolytes, I think is also important. I noticed when I tried Drew Prowett's water protocol. I learned it through his podcast, and it really charged me up in the morning. Just adding a little bit of electrolytes to my morning water. I mean, my brain just became alive before the caffeine even hit it. So I really found it does make a profound difference. And so when I'm doing something like a podcast or something like writing my emails or writing a blog, I really want to have all the mental power I can and cognition. So those are some of the lifestyle habits I will do on those days. Particularly, I'll make sure that I have the proper hydration.
Oh, those are wonderful. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of things of what you had said are already in the Tone in 10 program, because it really is about not just a one-off, right? Really incorporating that into the life, right? That's lifestyle and self-care are equal healthcare, right? We know that 90 to 95% of our health comes down to the habits that we do on a daily basis. And so I think it's really important people, have implementation of the things that we are talking about today on the podcast. Well, this has been fantastic, Prudence. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, for taking the time out of your busy schedule and to come on and educate the listeners. And if they want to learn more about you or work with you, where can we send them?
You can go to thehallcenter.com, and I give away my book called Radiant Again and Forever on there. If you put in your email, the book immediately loads to your email. And so that's probably the best way to reach me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that resource. And thank you for the work that you do in the world and educating us on how to live young and radiant as we age. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
Thanks for listening to the Health Habits and Epic Living podcast. If you're ready to take the next step to improve your health, wellness, and lifestyle goals, head over to www.epicu.com and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Again, that's EPICYOU.com. Please note that the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice.